You are doing well, and we're going to talk a little bit about the instructions of Merikare. We want to talk about this instructions, and I want to say up front, thank you so much for those who've been following me and just been sharing this information and like it. I very much appreciate it. And I want to say to those of you up front who are members, I have an updated copy, if you will, of this instructions for Merikare on the website that's available to you. So those who are paid members on YouTube here, it's $4.99 a month. Thank you so much. And as you know, as a part of that, not only do you get other things, you get a lot of downloadable resources that you can read and kind of sink your own teeth into and put your mind around it. So as we talk about these things, you want to get a chance to read it on your own and kind of look deeper into it. I want to be able to let you know that I have uploaded an updated copy of what we're going to talk about today, and it's available to members. All you have to do is go into the community tab, look there, and I have the information there for how to get it. So I want to thank you so much. So I want to kind of see, I want to talk about this whole idea of wisdom literature in ancient Kemet and talk about it from the standpoint of not just the literature itself, because that's important and that's significant. And we talk a lot about literature from other people. And I'm going to be going through this resource as we talk today. I'm going to be walking through this resource that will be available to those people who are members here on YouTube who are paying at least $4.99 a month. I so much appreciate it. So we will talk about this resource today, and they'll be able to download it. Thank you so much. But I want to talk about this because I was having just, some thoughts as I was reading through some things and like to kind of study the literature and look at it. And as I started to think about it, a lot of times we think about the literature that's in ancient Kemetic, just history and a lot of the historical records. And it's very much included and shrouded in and surrounded by religion and their aspect of God, which is very much important. But we don't really think about it from a philosophical standpoint. We talk a lot about philosophy in various parts of the world, and that's important. That's great. There are a lot of great philosophers and a lot of great philosophies. But when it comes to African literature, when it comes to Kemetic literature, which we'll be talking about today, we don't really give it a political idea. We don't say it's a political or governmental, philosophy about ruling, or we don't really talk about, the theology of it so much. We kind of just put it in this historical place as if it doesn't have as much significance as it does. So I want to kind of talk about that today and kind of minimize some things. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you so much for listening and joining in the chat. So I want to talk about it today because I think it's important for us to think about the literature and the instructions that go along with it. And what they really talk about as they kind of went through some of this, as we start to think about just what it was like and what they were practicing and what they were doing, what were they really talking about when it came to their literature and it came to philosophy when it comes to politics, right? So we're dealing with a lot of politics now. Politics is always a hot and heavy thing. This is a hot season for politics. People are saying all types of things, or they're saying divisive things, or things that they want to get elected, or all types of things going on. And we think about the concept of politics and not really, maybe looking at other aspects, and it's up to us. I was saying yesterday that when we think about our history, and the other day when we think about our history, it's up to us to start to look at our history in a different way. People have presented history to us in a certain way, and we all know that a lot of it's been wrong. We know a lot of it's been biased. We know it starts with only 2,000 years of history when there's literally millions of years of history, millions of years of human history that we should be talking about, and much more history than just the past 2,000 years. It starts and it centers around the people who defeated a lot of people. It centers around England. It centers around, a lot of us are speaking English, right? It centers around England. It centers around areas where they become the center of it, and they don't necessarily give credit to everybody else who contributed to world history and contributed to world development. So, sometimes even when you look at things that may have happened in the Renaissance, people may say things, but they might not even talk about the Moors and the Moors' contribution prior to the Renaissance ever beginning. What did the Moors do in Spain and in Portugal and in Northern Africa and throughout places, like the Middle East that we call the Middle East, and Iran and places like that, in Syria? What were they doing? Why was it significant? What did they do in other parts of Africa? Why were they so associated with studying and education? And why were they there prior to the Renaissance? We'll talk about that. What was going on in Italy? Were there some things in Italy that really contributed to things other than just the art side of it? Maybe there were other things that were contributions to, but sometimes we begin to just look at various things from a specific area and not really give the breadth of it. So it's up to us, I want to say that and kind of home on that over and over again. It is up to us. It is up to you and I to begin to treat history differently. It's up to you and I to teach our children differently. We can't rely on anybody else to do that. And one of the places we want to start right here, and we want to talk about that, is with respect to wisdom literature. We want to talk about, it's a whole genre of literature and ancient Kemetic thought and ancient Kemetic history, and in their whole documentation that's associated with their history. And, it's interesting because a lot of times, even when you read about ancient Kemet, you don't hear about their literature. I mean, like, I very rarely hear about your literature, and I studied literature quite a bit in school, and I love studying literature. I got, a lot of things you read from a lot of different time periods, but I can never remember, and I'm going to try to I cannot remember reading, not even the Teachings of Ptahhotep. I cannot remember reading anything that had to do with ancient Kemetic literature, like a piece of literature from ancient Kemet. I can't remember doing that. And, you read all kinds of things. You read, obviously, the Iliad and the Odyssey. You read various Greek things. You're going to read Shakespeare. You're going to read a whole lot of different things, Renaissance types of things. And you're going to read things maybe even from the Orient and various places like that, but almost never from Africa. Never anywhere in Africa until I got to college. And I don't think I've ever read in an educational setting ancient Kemetic literature. And when you start to study this, they have a wide range of literature. We just don't look at it as such. And it's up to you and I to change that, right? They had a different way of looking at the world. And that's the beautiful part of the world. It's like a wonderful garden. The world is like a wonderful garden where everybody gets to contribute. And nobody has to be the same. You don't want a flower that's exactly the same as every other flower in your garden. That wouldn't be a pretty garden, right? That wouldn't have much diversity, much prettiness to it, much beauty to it. You want it to be able to shine. And you don't have to let one flower or one aspect of your garden diminish itself so that something else can move forward. We ought to be able to have, there's enough room for everybody. And it's a beautiful thing for us to be able to see then, what does this culture bring forth? What does this part of the garden, what is this part of the human garden, if you will, humanity's garden, what does it have to offer? And so I want to look at that within that context as we talk about these instructions from Merikare. So I want to talk about that. And by the way, this gentleman here, this is a man who lived probably in the 9th or 10th dynasty BC in ancient Kemet. And he was, around 2000 BC or thereabouts. He probably was around just before the Middle Kingdom, or right as the Middle Kingdom started to develop under King Mentuhotep II. So that's why I'm kind of picking his statue kind of as a representation, because the document that we're going to talk about would have been written right around his time or a little before his time. So this would have been written around 2000 BC or thereabouts, or a little before that. And it was probably written maybe somewhere in the northern part of Kemet, maybe somewhere in the upper part of Kemet from a northern perspective as opposed to south. And it was written during a time right during that intermediate period, right in the time before Mentuhotep II became the leader of the Middle Kingdom, what we would call the Middle Kingdom, and unite the two lands again. He would unite Upper and Lower Kemet. Mentuhotep II would do that. This particular piece of literature that we're going to talk about was written just before that. And it was probably during the 9th or 10th dynasty that would have been considered not a part of the Middle Kingdom yet. And it would have been from a king whose name was most likely Keti, and he would have been giving instructions to his son, who was Merikare. And so he would have been telling his son, advising him how to take over the kingship. And it is an amazing document. There's way more in it than I could even put in this document. And Marian Leichton does some translations of this and some writing of this. So I encourage you to read it. And if you have my resource, I point to that in there so you can see it and read for yourself and kind of read the interpretation or that reference there. But there's so much in this. I mean, if you've read other political type of philosophies and things of that nature, you'll find a lot in this as well. And so this becomes one of the standout pieces of literature that was existing, that was found in ancient Kemet, where you have a king telling another king, a would-be king, how to become king. What are the things you need to look out for? So you start to talk about government, you're talking about politics, he's talking about legacy, he's talking about managing the troops, all those types of things. And I want to jump into it, and I want to see if there's anything we can pull out in our lives today. So I want to go from that perspective as we kind of jump into this literature. And so this is Merikare, and one of the things that jumps out at me is one of the quotes in here is that the tongue is the true weapon of a king. He mentions to his son, and he says, there are a lot of things that you're going to be dealing with. There are a lot of things that are going to come at you, and challenges that you're going to have to deal with. But the tongue and speaking is mightier than all kinds of fighting, all forms of fighting. Your speaking is mightier than that. Think about this. Here's a king, political. He's running the politics of the country, and he's telling his son something very smart. Your skillfulness in speaking, your skillfulness in communication will be better for you than any form of fighting that you can come up with. Because if you can speak skillfully in a challenging situation and to the people, you will always win. And so in reality, the true weapon of a king is just tongue. And so therefore you must master it. Now think about this, because you imagine how many people have in history, whether we're thinking about the prince and that famous document who out of Italy, or we think about today, right? And whether or not politicians today think about mastering the tongue in a holy way, mastering the tongue in in a moral way, whether they think about that idea of being able to speak well and communicate with people is better than fighting. And I know we know that because a lot of times we don't want to go to war because we have very sophisticated weapons and deadly weapons. But that whole idea to be teaching your son who's going to become king that you don't have to always go out and fight, that the tongue is the true weapon of the king, is a significant thing. So he goes on to tell him a number of things. So, he tells him up front that you may have troublemakers in your land. And if you find that there are people who are causing division in the land that you are running, and this could be your house, this could be your business that you're running. Think about it from that perspective. Or it could be your country, right? If you find that people are causing division in the country and in the land that you're running, you stop them right away. Put out this fire before this catches on. Put out this disease before it catches on. Because if people start to follow them, you're going to have a big trouble in hand. You're going to have a mighty trouble in hand. If you find that people are trying to divide the people and they're trying to throw flame on the fire, you as a son, and your tongue is going to be important too. You need to stop this right away, and you need to go before the councils, and you need to put an end to this, because an evil person, an evil thinker, a person who thinks evil, who meditates on evil, is a troublemaker. And you got to put that fire out before it starts. So imagine if you're a king and you're running things and you're trying to make sure things are smooth in your country, and he's telling you, you know what, be aware of people who cause division in your organization. Because if you don't put that fire out right away and put them out, it's the person by the water cooler who's trying to pull you down. If you don't step on that right away, you're going to have a big problem on your hands. Be able to do that. And he talks about, I want you to be justified before God. There's a lot of things with respect to ancient Kemetic literature that they talk about that relates to God, right? That talks a lot about being just before God. The whole idea of Maat, the whole idea of truth and justice and balance, is a fundamental part of Kemetic philosophy, theology, way of life, religion, politics, everything. It permeates everything, almost throughout its entire history. That idea of justice and balance. You can go, way back as you're thinking about pre-dynastic times and the Old Kingdom, all the way through the late period. This whole idea of Ma'at and this whole idea of being balanced and being truthful is something that comes across when it comes to leadership. And a lot of times it's interesting to me because a lot of people will say that they are, they have a Kemetic heritage, or they're Egyptian and they have a heritage, but nobody speaks of Ma'at. The only people who are like kind of latching on to the culture and trying to adopt it, I hear speak about. But a lot of people who are from the area, who say they don't want other people to talk about this, they don't talk about Maat. And I don't understand, unless there is some bias against the religion. I don't understand why someone would not talk about truth and justice, why somebody would not talk about order and living your way in life. If this is your heritage, if you are truly inheriting this culture, why that wouldn't be a part of what you say. And it is clear. And they talk about this quite a bit. They talk about being truthful and being of Maat. So as we kind of go on and continue to talk about it, he talks about, when you correct somebody for a crime, make sure that you're correcting them the right way. Make sure you're not going beyond what you need to go when you correct somebody. So here is him talking about how do you handle it. And then he gets into making your speech your servant, making your speech skilled. Become skilled at talking. Become skilled at how you communicate. If you were thinking about, this is one of the things I'll jump out at, and I'm interested to hear what you think about this, because I think we should look at this document as if it's, a father, as if you're talking about, a father to a son, or you're talking about how would I handle things when I become a parent. So if I'm a mother or if I'm a father, because a lot of times we talk about, children are born, we have children, and they don't come with instruction manuals. Well, let's look at this like this is an instruction. Let's stop. I'm going to change it a little bit as we're talking and pretend as if this is a conversation for parents, right? And this is, because literally this is a father talking to a son, but pretend as if this is a conversation for parents to help you think about how should I parent? Are there any things in this document, in this ancient wisdom literature, in this ancient literature that will tell me about parenting and help me as I run the things that I have authority over, whether it's my business or more importantly, my household? So he begins to tell them to be skilled in your speech and learn how to talk, right? Learn how to speak to people, and that your tongue is a true weapon. That speaking is stronger than all forms of fighting. And it's so funny because, a lot of times, people will, you'll find out if your parents, if they ever were mad at you and your parents are fussing and fussing and fussing, they're never stop fussing. And somebody's like, oh, mom, please stop. Okay, it's over. Please stop yelling. Or please stop talking about it. My mom sometimes would call everybody, call her sister, call various people and be like, you know what happened? You know what so-and-so did? I'm like, Lord, help me. But sometimes, when you're a parent, you don't always have to resort to going upside somebody's head. I know some people do that, right? And people have various perspectives about, corporal punishment. And I feel one way about it. I think that being able to talk and punishment is much more effective. Sometimes, in my opinion, you could tell me what you think. In my opinion, just spanking a child, just beating a child is quick and it's over. And a lot of times you may not necessarily always get the lesson you need to get out of that. You may do it. It may be over. You get over with it. Maybe you learn something. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you learned just not to do that in your parents' presence. Maybe you learn, I don't really want to talk to my parents about it because I just had a bad experience and I don't want to open up to them why I did that. And some of this instruction is saying at some point in time, you can't handle every situation with your child in the same way. You can't always, you have to be able to talk to them. You have to be able to have a tongue that's communicative and that is important. That doesn't mean that you get on a level, but you want to be able to be in a position where your child will be able to tell you anything and everything. And especially if your child is young, especially if your child is going through something in school, or somebody is hurting them, or something has happened and they need to be able to tell you. You want to be able to have your child be able to say anything to you. So try to be that kind of person where you open up and let that child say to you whatever they need to say to you, as opposed to just coming at them from a fighting perspective all the time. And that's what this is saying, that speaking is better than all forms of fighting. So, and it also mentions that a wise person is like a library to society. Think about that. And if you're smart, anybody who knows a wise person is not going to commit a crime around them. If you ever met somebody who's very smart or wise, or maybe they're moral and people respect them, and when that person comes around, people start up. If people are doing bad things, or they're saying bad words or curse words, or they're doing something, a certain person comes around and they stop behaving that way, not because they don't like them, but actually because they respect them. You ever been that way? Imagine if we have people in our society who are like that, people who are elders. And King Piankhy, who was a Kushite king in the 25th dynasty, the Kushite king who helped to take over Kemet, said when he was taking over one of the cities in Kemet, he said, there are no elders in your city. We are your elders. Your cities are filled with children. There's nobody here. There's no grown person who's taught young people how to be adults. And that's why you're probably making the decisions you're making, because you're making foolish decisions, basically, in terms of going against me. You have no elders in your city. Think about when you have a wise person and how you develop wisdom, and whether or not that's an important thing to have in your family, that type of respect, that's an important thing to have in your society. It's just very interesting. A wise person is like a library to a society. And there's the famous African proverb that when an elder dies, a library is burned. So when you start to think about that, it talks about justice, and it talks about to make sure that the words of our ancestors are always in books. Think about that for a second. Make sure that the words of your ancestors are always in books. Open them and read them and copy down their wisdom. This is what this says. Our ancestors, think about how many things have happened in Africa. And we're talking about history. We talk about a show that's talking about history. How many things do we have are lost, or how many things are in books and we don't read them, right? That's up to us to kind of get out there. But the whole idea of if you're doing your part and I'm doing my part and I'm trying and you're doing your part, as we move forward, because nobody lives forever, people die, we have to make sure that our ancestors' wisdom and their knowledge stays inside of books and stays in front of the minds and the faces of our young people. And the only way we do this is we make it a part of a curriculum. If it's not the curriculum of school, it's our own curriculum, our curriculum for our home. Do you have a curriculum for your home? Do you have something literally that you want to have your children, that you want to make sure that your children learn? I thought about this when my child was younger. There were several books. There were several things I wanted him to know. He was going to know about Malcolm X. He was going to know about Frank. He was going to know certain things that I planned. He's going to read these books. He's going to know about. There's almost like a curriculum that you can plan for your child to say, you know what, by the time you grow up, by the time you get out of here on your own, there are certain things that I'm going to teach you. And sometimes we have that in our mind and sometimes we don't. It's worth writing it down. It's worth literally taking the time to plan out what are the things that I need to teach my child. And for me, it's 5 things. It's around spirituality, which is the most important thing. It's the undergird, and it's the foundation for everything else that will come. The other things I'm going to talk about: education, finance, your relationships, how you fall in love, and your health. If those 5 things make or break you. If you're not educated, it's hard for you to have a career. It's hard for you to have a lot of things in life that you want to be able to have to your fullest extent. If you don't know how to manage resources and finances, it's going to be difficult for you to have a family and to have the life that you want. If you don't have your health, none of this matters. If you're not healthy and you don't take care of yourself, none of this matters. Your health is significantly important. It's primarily important. And if you don't choose your relationships wisely, respect your family, and choose who you want to start new families with, or a new family with, that's a very significant thing that can make or break you. And if you do all this within a context of a moral structure, within the context of morality, it will guide your decisions, right? Any one of these decisions can be moral or immoral, right? What you do with your finances, what you do with your education, what you do in your relationships, they could be moral or immoral. If you have a moral guidance for all these things, you will be able to make right decisions. So I think that's a very important way to approach this. And as we look at how he's talking to his son Aaron, he gives him more. He tells him to make sure that you are remembered because of the love that you've shown people. Make sure that people know you because of love. And I compare this to some of the things that I've heard, and I'm going to do more reading about, but some of the things I've heard about some of the philosophies that came out of early modern political philosophies, and people who share philosophies that, get what you need to get, that the end justifies the mean, get it however you need to get it. If you got to walk over somebody to get something, make sure you get it. Make sure people are afraid of you. Make sure you put the fear of people in their hearts, and make sure you rule by terror, right? There are a lot of people in history who rule by terror. There are people who do that in their families. And it doesn't always turn out right. Because if you rule by terror, the people that you're ruling don't want to be around you. They don't want to be with you. And when you need them, they're not going to be with you because they're afraid of you. And they may not like you. Think about this man is saying that love is more powerful. This is a king, a Kemetic king, telling his son that love is more powerful. It's more powerful than hate. It's more powerful than fear. And be sure that people like you, that people remember you because of the love you've shown them. Because that's going to benefit you in the afterlife. They literally believe it has a benefit in the afterlife. And that's going to make you have a more peaceful society if you can find a way to make love and goodness to be the way that you rule. So as he's talking about, he goes on to say, to make sure that you secure your borders. People will respect you. If you were thinking about, and this is another interesting point, because I'd be interested to what people say about this. God bless you. God bless you. Thank you so much. The love of God in the world for the protection of the world. How about that? Putting the love of God in the world. God needs you in order to, there you go. Put the love of God for the protection of the world. There you go. Greetings. God bless you as well. Law of Maat. When you think about that, he's saying here, and I'm interested in your thoughts about this because I think this is a very important point. Here's a king saying to his son, he's saying, have the foresight, make sure as the leader of this land that you are protecting your borders. Make sure that your troops are strong, because if you ahead of time protect your borders and make sure you can't be invaded, people will thank you and remember you for your forethought, right? That if you just stop and hope that things will happen, you're going to fail. Basically saying you just can't hope your borders will be safe. You got to go make sure that they're safe. And to me, when I think about one of the most significant things that have happened in history, especially within the past 500 to maybe even 1,000 years, if you thereabouts or more, is warfare. That whole development of the gun, development of sophisticated forms of de-aliving people, unaliving people, killing people, that type of thing, that has had, unfortunately, an impact almost more so than anything else. I mean, a lot of the things that we are speaking, the businesses that we're doing, that we're running, the clothes that we're wearing, the languages that we speak, have a lot to do with people who conquered other people. We're speaking English all over the world, and it's the language of commerce for a reason. Because England conquered a lot of people, and they didn't do it with flowers, they did it with weaponry. And so when I think about that, I think that violence and guns and weaponry have been things that have changed the world in ways that we should not want, that we don't want that to be the case. And I think that there's this balance there, that if you are running a political unit, you're running an organization, a country, or even your household, you have to have this balance where you are living and running your household in love, but also knowing that you need to secure your borders. Because the person that's out there may not be thinking about you the way you're thinking about them. Think about the African people who met European people, who met the Portuguese and the Spanish earlier on, then the English and the Dutch and the French, and met them and may have thought of something different. That maybe had no idea that the evil that was coming. The Native American, the people who were already here, who were in today's Dominican Republic, or the island of Jamaica and Haiti and in Central and South America and North America, what they thought about when they met these people for the first time, they may have had no idea the evil that was about to come, the death that was about to come, that literally about to come around the way. And I think that becomes a very important, significant point. How do you balance making sure that you protect yourself, protect your home, protect yourself, protect your country, your nation. Any country needs that. That's just true, while also being able to live righteously and live with love and morality. I think there's a balance there. And I think that's why, from a Kemetic perspective, you had various aspects of that, different manifestations of God. So you have Set manifest as he's fighting for you, and Ra coming to fight for you. And you have Amen that is hidden, and you have Maat that's talking about balance and order. So you have these things that are existing at the same time, that know when to rear their heads, when to be used, and that they all are subject to God's law and to God's pervasiveness, and that you don't do this unless you are doing this in a just way, unless you have to. So I think that's an interesting point, and I'm interested to hear what you guys say with it, how you balance that too, because Europe, how you balance that too, because that becomes a significant thing for anybody to balance in their lifetime. Anybody has to balance that idea between when you do Set, when you do Haru, when you put forth strength and power, when you do things with respect to love. And this is what this king is talking about. When it comes to your borders, protect them. And when it comes to your people, love them. That may be it right there. That may be part of the answer, right? And he talked about, it is evil for a person to desire something that somebody else wants. And that, everyone on earth passes away. That as a king, as a young man, you're not going to live forever. Nobody is going to live forever. Even the person who comes who is divine, the person who is divine and looks like a star and has all these manifold things, that person passes away, just like the person who is evil. A good person passes away and an evil person passes away. How you live your life becomes significant. What you do in between when you're born and when you pass away is significant, and it contributes to your eternity. And so that idea that you live forever, it doesn't happen. So you should make sure that you are judging your land in a way, and you're acting according to a way that what you're doing now is going to be paying off into eternity, that you're going to be living into eternity, and how you live today is going to impact that eternity. So he's mentioning that as well. And I'll pop real quick and look at a couple of the comments for that. Yeah, you go. And God bless you. So that becomes significant. So as he's talking about this, he continues to say, that wealth is true peace is more than wealth, right? And that if a person is truly wealthy, they don't really need anything. They lack nothing if they have peace in their home and they have true wealth. If they have true wealth of loving and of peace and of prosperity in their home, they really don't feel the need to cheat. And it's important for you to have your officials encourage them to have true wealth, encourage them to have real peace and interaction as they go ahead, because anyone who has true peace and wealth at home may not be inclined to cheat to get ahead, right? So he's saying when you manage people around you, and he also says you are a great man if the people around you are great. Think about that for a minute. Now, I want to stop and talk about that one for a second. Think about that. He's saying that if the counselors around you are great as a king, you will be a great king. Imagine if you thought about that when it comes to your wife or your husband. You will be a great man if the woman you marry is great. You will be a great woman if the man you marry is great. However, that you will be a great person if the person you choose to be around you is also great. Many people, my gosh, we never talk about that. So many people make decisions about who they want to mate and to marry just by what they hear on TV or in songs. And a lot of that has nothing to do but materiality and lust and sex. Nothing to do with, is that person a good person? Does that person bring something to the table? Because when you are joining in a marriage, and remember I was telling about the 5 important things, and relationships being one of them. When you are joining in a marriage, that's a partnership. That's like a business partnership. More people will take more time to study someone who is a business partner than they will somebody they might marry or have a child with. That's just the truth. And we all have done it. We all have been guilty of it. All of us, myself, we all have done that and been guilty of it. We will spend more time. More people will spend more time examining and think about a person who might be a business partner relative to somebody who might be somebody you would join your life and have a child with and raise a child with. That becomes very significant. He's saying that if you put time into it and not just look at the outward things, not just look at somebody's body or their attractiveness or their money, is this a great person? Is the quality of this person's spirit? Is their character there? Because you're going to need that person's character. You're going to need that person's wisdom. If that person is married to you, they're going to be, partnering with you in terms of your business, in terms of important financial decisions, in terms of how you raise your child, in terms of how you live your retirement, in terms of how you're going to be taken care of if you get sick and you have health problems, in terms of how your house will be run. So many things that you'll be partnering with that person. Is that person a good person? Does that person bring a lot to the table, or are you just looking at superficial things, material things? And if you do, you're going to have a problem. So you will be a great person. You will be a great man if the people around you are great. So he's telling his son to choose greatness and to choose great people. So he begins to talk to them about a myriad of things with respect to being able to make sure that you are not quiet in the face of violence, that you are someone who is going to respect God's offerings, and that you're going to make sure that you walk in a way that you understand that your life is for eternity. You're not living here for a short period of time. You're really living for eternity. And when you go before that great judge, when you are judged by that council of gods, you understand that they're not going to be impressed with your number of years. They're not going to be impressed in terms of how long you lived or this whole idea that the end justified the means. They're going to look at your deeds. They're not going to just look at your money. They're going to look at what you did, because of them, your amount of years mean nothing. That's like an hour or a minute before them. They're not impressed by that. They're not impressed by time. They're going to be impressed by what you did. And if you lived a great life, if you passed that judgment, then your deeds will be set up beside you like a treasure. Then your deeds will be respected and they will be held before you in terms of eternity. So it becomes significant to understand that you're going to live for eternity on the other side. And what you do on this side is a significant aspect of that. So I just wanted to share that and put that out there. I want to thank you. I'm going to be coming back some more, talking more about this type of literature and some of the things that we have that we can actually look at the documents with respect to ancient Kemetic and to kind of jump into it. So if you have any other comments, please put it down below. Thank you so much for listening, and God bless you. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for sharing this with somebody.